Hello, welcome to the Cultural Index series where we look into the lore, history and specialties that make up various species in science fiction, this time the oogly ood or Oodkind from Doctor Who. I will be drawing from the show as the main source but probably tying in some extended apocrypha here and there to flesh them out a bit. Let's get started. To begin with, we'll start with their planet of origin, Oodsphere. This planet is a terrestrial world located in the same system as an alien race from classic Who, the Sensorites, from the neighbouring planet simply known as the Sense Sphere. Humans first encountered this system in the 28th century and met the Sensorites, but apparently overlooked the neighbouring Oodsphere until the 39th century, although let's be fair, time travel could have altered these dates anyway. This system is located within the Horsehead Nebula, and the Oodsphere itself is a moon that orbits a ringed gas giant. The moon does have a breathable oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere and near standard gravity, but its atmosphere is notably colder than Earth's. Rocky terrain encrusted with ice and snow is the most common sight, from towering spires and arches eroded by centuries of wind shear to pinnacles formed of the very ice itself. The constant snow covering and reflective ice gives the planet a very bright look to it, and the north and south are glaciers. Caverns lace the planet's crust, and it's within these that the Ood dwell, with their communities built around their telepathy. From the unique Ood biology, we can assume that the Oodsphere has relatively few predatory species, if any at all, which led the Ood to evolve to become rather docile and a trusting people. So let's move on to their biology. The Ood, like the Sensorites, are relatively homogeneous in appearance in terms of physical features. They possess bulbous heads and are strongly telepathic. Ood have a number of feeding tendrils that hang from their lower head. It is not mentioned what exactly they eat, but considering they have no visible jaw muscles, it's probably a liquid diet, utilising their tendrils to slurp up substances. The Ood have two brains, a forebrain and a hindbrain. The forebrain was located in the skull, as with most other humanoids, and held sway over the body and telepathic abilities of the Ood. The hindbrain was actually external and attached via a durable nervous cord which hung from the tendrils. This required the Ood to hold the hindbrain in their palm, which is why I suspect that the Oodsphere had no natural predators. Such a vulnerability meant that the Ood were a harmless and benign species, as any violent act risked literal brain damage to the exposed mind. This has evolved with time into a philosophy that the Ood must never kill. The hindbrain stored the Ood's memories, emotion, and in effect personality and sense of self. Naturally, they exist in a telepathic communion with one another that they call the Song, and when perceived by other telepaths it does indeed sound like a harmonious choir, and when in proximity even non-telepathic races can overhear the song. The individual Ood are just that, individual, so long as their hindbrain remains intact, but also are a part of this telepathic network. At the centre of the Ood is a form simply known as the Ood brain, a giant mind that is the hub for their telepathic contact that amplified the individual's telepathy and mental power. This brain is equally exposed to the elements and immobile. Although it was originally found under the Northern Glacier, its range was said to cover 3 galaxies and reach every Ood out there, making it one of the most powerful telepaths in the Whoniverse. Their telepathic field was measured in levels known as basic, and at basic 0, or complete silence, an Ood would effectively collapse into a dormant state, so necessary to their existence was this form of communication. When the song or other telepathy was particularly intense, their eyes would glow red, which unfortunately for most other species is seen as a sign of malevolence and unnerving. If left naturally to adapt, it seems that certain Ood will appear known as Elder Ood. They function as leaders among the others, and it seems to have a greater affinity with the song, able to direct certain endeavours, such as perceiving through time and telepathically transmitting visions across both time and space. Additionally, the Ood brain could single out and focus its intent through an individual Ood, such as Ood Sigma, which personified its patience and mercy for a time. The Ood sphere was encountered in the 39th century by the Second Great and Bountiful Human Empire, which would prove to be detrimental to the humble species. As the species had no ability to resist, some nefarious people decided to exploit them and set up Ood operations. Until the 42nd century, this company enslaved the Ood by limiting their telepathy in several ways. Firstly, they dampened the Ood brain's reach, which had the immediate effect of diminishing the Ood's mental capacity and isolating them from one another. Without their song, the Ood were still telepathic, but only over short range and with one another. Then they lobotomized them. By removing the hindbrain, they cut away an Ood's sense of self, leaving it a highly suggestible husk without purpose. To enable others to communicate with them now that their telepathy was so diminished, they then grafted a translation orb to them in its place. They then began to sell these slaves throughout the Second Human Empire and perpetuated the myth that Ood were naturally this way and that you needed to give them orders to give them purpose. To public perception, this indeed seemed to be the case, as an Ood that was not put to task simply crawled away and died, unable to function without direct supervision. But not many questioned why they acted this way, so dominant was this propaganda and convenient the Ood. Some did, such as the Friends of the Ood organisation, but these were in the minority. However, when it all came to light due to the intervention of the Doctor, most of the human empire was rightly horrified at the truth, and by the 42nd century every Ood had been returned to the Ood sphere, and the species left to pursue its own goals, with its song restored in full. By 4226, they had developed their own advanced culture, including the ability to mentally time travel, prophesize, and they developed their own trade deals with their sensorite neighbours. They had a ruling council headed by the Elder, although the Doctor noted that this advancement was accelerated because of the fear of the impending return of the Time War. Before the Ood were returned to their natural state, however, the Ood were exploited in other ways by other powers too. Without the Ood brain, their elders, or their song, the Ood's telepathic network was vulnerable to outside influence. You see, the Ood's minds were still there, so they still had all the equipment for strong telepathic networks, just without direction, leaving such a role to be usurped by malevolent forces. This happened several times, such as when the beast trapped on krop-tor manifested its will through the Ood, turning them hostile with its own telepathy. Additionally, the powerful being, known as House, dominated the psyche of an Ood called Nephew, and the Master has been able to influence Ood with his own psychic proficiency. In these cases, the Ood seemed to be able to channel their mental energies back down the translator orb, delivering shocks through it that proved lethal to the nervous system. It would seem that this is an oversight in the design of these devices, but the Ood never exhibited any hostile intent before, so why would people think to look for a form of psychic shock delivered through a device they created? In all, the Ood are a tragic species. When left alone to develop, they are humble, benign, and a social species where compassion is an evolutionary necessity, and violence near impossible because of their fragility. Their reliance on telepathy was their strength and their weakness, as it only took the actions of a few to enslave them all. Even worse, while in this state they were taken over by other powers and used as tools by even these, and so complete was the cover-up of their true origin that even the Doctor was unaware of an Ood's true nature. For a time even he was as ignorant as everyone else. Left to their own devices, it seems that the Ood are content to simply exist amongst themselves, although it's hard to say where they'll go next, as even the development witnessed by the Doctor was technically an aberration due to temporal meddling from the Master and the Time Lords. For now, though, they are rebuilding their culture, although because of the widespread acts of Ood operations, some serving Ood remain displaced in time and space. With their tentacled faces, telepathic abilities, and reliance on a central giant brain, basically the Ood are hippie mind flayers. Thanks for watching this video on the Ood, and let me know what species the Index should look towards next. The choices this week are either the strange Hannah of Mass Effect, or perhaps the Zenkethi of Star Trek Online specifically. Votes are on the community tab, so thanks again for watching. I've been Rick, and goodbye.